ASUS ROG Strix G18, Lenovo Legion Pro 7i, and HP Omen 17. They're all unapologetically large-screen, high-power machines, but they don't serve the same person the same way. One is a straight-up performance hammer dressed in RGB, one is the grown-up, balanced workhorse that quietly outlasts the hype, and one is the value-first big-screen rig that nails the good-enough everywhere brief. I'm going to walk you through exactly how they feel to live with. The displays and thermals you'll actually notice, the frame rates that matter, the noise you'll hear at 2 a.m., the battery reality when you're stuck in class, and the little design choices that either make you smile every day or grind your gears. And yes, we'll slide in that CineX lifestyle moment in the middle like we always do, because movie nights and watch parties deserve a line item in your laptop decision. Let's start with the ASUS, because the ROG Strix G18 is the one that sets the tone for what desktop replacement means in 2025. Open the lid, and the first thing you feel is scale. This is a true 18-inch canvas in 16:10, running a fast 2560 by 1600 panel at high refresh. On the best configs, it's bright, quick, and tuned for motion clarity. The kind of screen that makes single-player worlds feel bigger and competitive shooters feel butter. Is it the absolute wild mini LED magic you see on ASUS's Scar line? No, the G18's panel stays in the fast IPS/LCD lane, but it's still a joy if you're stepping up from a 1080p 144Hz panel. Here's the real point. An 18-inch QHD Plus screen fundamentally changes how you work and play. Timelines in Premiere breathe, spreadsheets stop feeling cramped. Open-world games don't just look sharper, they're easier on your eyes over long sessions because you're not squinting at HUDs anymore. Once you go 18, 15 looks tiny, and 16 looks fine, I guess. Under the hood, the G18 does the obvious thing. Throw high-wattage silicon at you and back it up with big cooling. HX-class Intel chips, RTX 40 series GPUs up to the engines you buy for bragging rights, VRR through Advanced Optimus, and a thermal solution that says, no, we're not throttling today. This is the machine that treats GPU power limits like a challenge. You'll feel it in the way frame rates sit steady after the 20-minute mark when most thin rigs start sagging. Play a long cyberpunk session at QHD high with ray tracing balanced and DLSS quality, and you live mostly in the 70 to 90 frames per second window on the top configs. Flip to Apex or Valorant, and you're pegging the refresh ceiling with room to spare. That's the G18 energy, brute force delivered consistently. But brute force has a personality, and you need to be okay with it. On performance or turbo profiles, the G18's fans are not shy. You'll hear them. The chassis is large enough to spread heat well, and the vapor chamber/copper stack does its job. But physics is physics. 18 inches of high TGP GPU plus HX CPU equals a lot of watts to move. If you're gaming on a desk with a headset, it's fine. If you're trying to stealth game next to a sleeping roommate, not so much. Battery? It's a big pack for a laptop. Think, 90 watt-hour class. But nobody buys this to be unplugged all day. Expect 2-ish hours for light work if you baby it, 4 to 5 for mixed use with everything tuned down, and 45 to 90 minutes if you're silly enough to game on battery. Ports are solid, with HDMI for a TV, Ethernet for stable pings, plenty of USB-A for the legacy gear that never dies, and USB-C/DP for docks and fast externals. Keyboard is classic ROG, per key RGB, deep enough travel to not feel mushy, and a numpad zone that makes spreadsheets painless. It's not a mechanical party trick, but it's consistent and comfortable. Now swing to the Legion. Lenovo's Legion Pro 7. Looks like someone took a gaming laptop and asked, what if we made it behave like a professional tool first? The styling is clean, boxy, almost industrial. The lid doesn't scream for attention, the lighting is tasteful, the hinge feels robust, and the deck ergonomics say long sessions welcome. You immediately notice the I/O philosophy. So much of it goes to the back. That means your desk looks cleaner because HDMI, Ethernet, and the fat USB cables root away from your mousing hand. It's a little thing that becomes a big thing after month 3. Inside, you still get the parts you want. High-end Intel HX Silicon paired with RTX 40 series up the stack, but Lenovo tunes for sustained balance, not headline peak. Their cooling is more big dual fans plus thick heat pipes plus roomy vents than space-age vapor show, and the result is boring in the best way. Performance that stays within 5 to 10% of its first run, session after session, without sounding like a leaf blower if you don't want it to. Display-wise, Legion skews 16-inch 2560 by 1620/400 Hz on the Pro 7i, and I know you're side-eyeing that because this is an 18-inch comparison. But here's the truth. That 16-inch panel hits the ergonomic sweet spot for a lot of people. It keeps the laptop footprint smaller, it's easier to sling daily, and the pixel density is gorgeous for both gaming and content. You lose literal square inches versus the G18, but you gain carry comfort and battery sanity. And if your setup includes an external monitor on the desk, the on-the-go panel is less critical. The panel quality is consistently good on the better SKUs, crisp, quick, and color true enough to grade short-form content without feeling like you're guessing. What really sells the Legion, though, is how user-friendly it is over the long haul. 2 SODIMM slots for RAM, 2 M.2 slots for storage, a bottom panel that isn't booby-trapped by ribbon cables, and a software layer, Lenovo Vantage/LAAI stuff, that, while never perfect, tends to get out of your way. If you've ever cursed a sealed RAM gaming laptop 6 months in, you already know why this matters. Creators love it because you start with 32 GB today and jump to 64 GB when your 4K timeline starts choking. Gamers love it because you add a second SSD when your Steam folder becomes a clown car. And while fan tone is subjective, the Legion usually reads as lower pitch whoosh instead of high pitch whine at equivalent loads, which your ears will thank you for. Battery life is, let's say, reasonable for the class. A notch better than the big 18-inch tanks if you tune the profiles, nowhere near an Ultrabook, but survivable through a lecture plus a cafe session if you're disciplined about refresh rate and brightness. Now the Omen. HP's Omen 17 is the one that always surprises people because it doesn't dress like a hype beast. It looks simpler, it feels less shouty, and on a lot of shelves it costs meaningfully less than the fully cranked ROG or Legion hardware. And that's the point. You can spec decent Intel or AMD chips, pair them with RTX 4060/4070/4080 class graphics depending on your budget, and get a 17.3-inch QHD panel at 165 to 240 Hz that does exactly what it says. Delivers clean frames at the resolutions and settings most folks actually use. In real games, a well-spec'd Omen 17 will do the thing. 120 to 160 frames per second in esports at QHD with competitive settings, 70 to 100 frames per second in most AAA titles at QHD high with upscaling on, and you can always drop to 1080p for absurdly high refresh if you're chasing motion clarity. It's not straining for the last 5%, it's giving you the 95% that matters for less money than the flagship sticker. Build and thermals are where HP plays it conservative, and honestly that's okay. The cooling solution isn't as exotic as the show ponies, but it's competent. Broad vents, sensible heat pipe layout, fans that ramp a little earlier to keep temps from spiking. You'll hear them under load, but the tone is tolerable, and the chassis doesn't turn into a hot plate under your WASD hand. The keyboard's a straight shooter, full layout with numpad, nice travel, predictable feel. Not the deep dish typing joy of a dedicated mech board, but better than good enough. Ports are practical: HDMI, Ethernet, a spread of USB-A and USB-C. And while HP's software has had its share of more flash than function moments over the years, the current Omen control app is competent for fan curves and performance modes without becoming a second operating system. Battery life is very much big gaming laptop reality. But it doesn't nosedive if you tune the usual suspects. Think a short work sprint without power if needed, not a day away from the wall. Okay, now that you've got the vibe of each, Let's talk about what your life actually looks like on these things. Imagine a typical day for someone who games hard, creates a bit, and studies works in between. On the G18, mornings are a coffee shop with the refresh rate set to 60 Hz, DGPU off via hybrid mode, brightness at 50%, and you're getting through a lecture's worth of notes plus some light Figma or Excel work before the battery meter starts giving you the side eye. Afternoon. Back at the dorm or office, you plug in, performance mode on, and the machine becomes a different animal. You grab 90 to 120 frames per second in Helldivers 2 at QHD. Balanced. You Alt-Tab to resolve to color a short, and the timeline stays smooth because your GPU isn't power-starved. By night, you've got friends over, and here's where the 18-inch screen is both blessing and wish I had more inches. The image looks fantastic on the desk, but the couch is calling. This is the moment we always talk about. You pull the CineX out of the drawer, one HDMI cable or a simple USB-C to HDMI dongle, lights off, and your tiny living room wall becomes a 100-inch screen. The G18 handles the playback like it's bored, and now the soundbar or a BT speaker fills the room. This is the lifestyle we keep pushing because it works. You're not forced into a TV you don't have space for, and your laptop becomes the engine for the night. Run the same day on the Legion Pro 7i, and a few things change. The morning grind is calmer. A smaller footprint means it's less of a table hog. The battery holds on a bit better if you're careful, partly because the 16-inch panel draws a hair less, and because Lenovo's hybrid mode defaults feel a touch more conservative. When you plug in and flip to performance, what you notice is sound and stamina. The Legion doesn't flare as dramatically. It spools into noise more gradually and tends to keep that "I can do this all night" energy during long exports or raids. The keyboard, frankly, is a joy for typing if you write a lot. Firm yet cushioned switch feel with a layout that avoids weird compromises. If you're a creator dabbling in 3D, the Legion's ability to take 64 GB RAM and easy SSD expansion means your future self will thank you. Come movie time, the Legion's screen is a sweet spot when you're solo, and again, the CineX moment turns it into a shared experience. It's less about spectacle and more about everything staying predictable. If you're the person who values that quiet competence, you feel it every day. Try the day on the Omen 17, and it's about sanity and savings. The morning isn't glamorous, but it's comfortable. You can still fit it on a small table without elbowing your neighbor. Battery behaves if you're disciplined. Set a power saver profile, cap refresh, keep brightness realistic, and you'll make it through a couple of classes or a block of emails before you need the charger. Back at the desk, the Omen does exactly what you bought it to do. Run your games well at the resolution you own. You won't chase max ray tracing. You'll pick sensible presets, flip on DLSS/FSR, and enjoy actually playing instead of tuning. If you're editing, it'll handle 4K shortform with proxies or sensible timelines, exports will finish, and temps will stay in a range you can live with. At night, yes, the CineX flips the same switch. Nobody sitting on the couch cares whether your GPU is 175 watts or 140 watts. They care that the movie looks big and smooth and the snacks keep coming. That's the Omen's charm. It doesn't demand you defend your purchase to anyone, including yourself. Let's talk raw performance windows in a way that actually helps. Esports first, because that's where most hours are spent. All three of these, when spec'd sensibly, read "not the absolute basement GPU," will crush 1080p competitive settings in Valorant, CS2, Siege, Fortnite. Think triple-digit frames that overrun any panel you pick. At QHD native, the story shifts. The G18 with higher-tier GPUs is the one that keeps you north of 200 frames per second with less compromise in competitive titles and holds approximately 100 and something in heavier shooters at high. The Legion Pro 7i, with its 16-inch QHD, feels like the best balance. 165 to 200 plus frames per second in esports on high but not stupid. 70 to 110 frames per second in cinematic games at high with smart upscaling. The Omen 17 does the practical thing. 1440p esports at 144 to 200 frames per second if you set it right, and big games in the 60 to 90 frames per second lane, where they feel smooth and look great. If you're chasing RTX showcase moments, path-traced cyberpunk, Alan Wake 2's heavy ray tracing, the G18 class simply has the headroom to make those experiments enjoyable instead of educational. Creators, your reality is a little different. It's not just about can it render, it's about what your brain experiences over a long day. The G18 chews through exports fastest on like-for-like GPUs, yes, but it asks you to live with more fan, more desk space, and more cable sprawl. If you batch export at night, you'll love it. If you edit 6 hours a day in a quiet room, you might prefer the Legion's sound profile and memory storage ceiling. The Omen is the "it will finish the job" pick. You keep projects modest, use proxies when you should, and you don't waste afternoons waiting on a render because you set realistic expectations. Color work is good enough on all three if you calibrate, but the best panels in this trio day-to-day are the Legion's better IPS or OLED options for consistency and the G18's sheer size for grading clarity. The Omen's QHD panels are fine for content, but won't wow you with HDR punch, which is okay if your output is SDR social anyway. Thermals and acoustics deserve their own sanity check. The G18's advantage is that it's big enough to allow serious wattage without immediate melt. Its disadvantage is that the fan tone at full chat is assertive. You can tune curves, yes, but physics again. To move that much heat, air must move. The Legion spends its design budget smoothing that experience. Fewer spikes, more plateau, less jet spooling vibe. The Omen is tuned to be safe. It'll ramp sooner and sometimes a little louder than you expect at medium loads, but you'll notice the palm rest and WASD area staying nicer to the touch over time. If you're streaming, the mic gate you set matters. If you're in a shared space, the balanced profiles on the Legion and Omen keep roommates happier than the G18's default performance roar. Keyboards and trackpads are the daily touch story. ASUS's per-key RGB and deep travel will make most of you happy. It's a full layout that doesn't try to be clever. Lenovo's keyboard is the one typists tend to gush about. Crisp actuation, less wobble, and legends you can read at 2 a.m. HP's board is classic Omen. Straightforward, comfortable, not flashy, with a numpad that actually saves time in Excel and in RPG hotbars. Trackpads on all three are finally large and accurate enough that you can take notes and surf without a mouse in a pinch. But let's be honest, these are gaming laptops. You'll use a mouse. Portability reality check before we pretend these are ultrabooks. You can carry all of them. You will carry them less if you have stairs. The G18 is backpack worthy but bag dominating. Pick a bag with good straps and a sleeve because corner dings on 18-inch lids are heartbreakers. The Legion is "I can daily this" in a way the G18 isn't if you're commuting. The footprint fits better on lecture desks and cafe tables. The Omen 17 sits in the middle. It's a big slab, but the rounded edges and simpler shape make it feel less bulky in and out of bags. Chargers. All three ship bricks that are basically self-defense weapons. You can stray into USB-C charging for light tasks if your config supports it, but for performance, you're packing the brick. Buy a second one and leave it at your desk. Your shoulders will thank you. Software and little annoyances. You know I'm not skipping that. Armory Crate on ASUS has matured. Still busy, still a lot of toggles, but it does what it promises, and the per-game profiles save real time once you do the initial setup. Lenovo's Vantage and the newer AI layers can feel calmer. They don't ask you to babysit them, and firmware updates tend to be less dramatic. HP's Omen Control Center is a practical middle, fan and power profiles where you expect them, RGB controls that don't gaslight you, and not too many pop-ups. Bloatware is a thing on all Windows machines. You'll spend your first evening uninstalling the same 3 apps, then you won't think about it again. Now let's talk money, because value changes everything. At equal top specs, the G18 will often be the priciest, and it earns that with panel size, thermal ambition, and GPU headroom. The Legion Pro 7 I frequently undercuts it while landing within touching distance of its performance in real life, and then gives you the upgrade story that makes it feel like a smart long-term buy. The Omen 17 goes on sale a lot, and that's honestly its most dangerous weapon. It's the machine that's good enough at 20 to 30% less, and for a huge chunk of buyers who aren't chasing niche benchmarks, that's the entire argument. Watch the SKUs, learn the GPU power limits, check panel options. Don't get baited by a flashy CPU if the GPU is the one you really live on. And if you edit, care more about RAM and SSD config than a tiny CPU bump you won't feel after week 2. Alright, time to be brutally clear so nobody leaves confused. If you want the most wow per second, the biggest screen, the steadiest high-end frame rates, the feeling that your laptop eats AAA games for breakfast and asks for seconds, the ASUS ROG Strix G18 is your machine. You are explicitly signing up for weight, fan noise, and a higher price, and you are getting a rig that feels like a portable tower with a built-in esports panel. You will not regret it if your life is plugged-in power user who games hard, edits hard, and doesn't care about stealth. If you want a machine that respects your time and your ears, that you can upgrade, keep cool, and rely on semester after semester or project after project, the Lenovo Legion Pro 7e is the adult choice. You sacrifice literal inches of screen for a chassis that lives better on real desks. You still game at elite levels, and you get a platform that ages gracefully because you can feed it more RAM and storage when your ambitions grow. If you want the biggest canvas you can afford without wrecking your budget, a laptop that plays modern games well at 1440p, edits content without tantrums, and looks clean enough to take anywhere, the HP Omen 17 is the sleeper pick. It won't headline a benchmark chart, but it will make you smile every weekend because it does everything you actually asked of it without drama, and it leaves money in your pocket for a good monitor, a real mouse, and yes, that CineX projector that turns your wall into movie night. The truth is, there's no wrong answer here, only the wrong answer for your life. The G18 is the extrovert athlete who wins on raw performance and spectacle. The Legion is the dependable friend who always shows up, doesn't complain, and quietly gets more done than anyone else. The Omen is the budget-savvy roommate who's not flashy, but somehow makes every plan work. Decide who you are, not who the spec sheet wants you to be. Because 6 months from now, when you're 3 seasons deep into Ranked, 5 freelance edits old, and 10 CineX movie nights happier, you won't remember the tiny benchmark deltas. You'll remember whether your laptop felt like a partner or a project. Pick the partner.